After the crash, the day my parents died, there wasn't a funeral or time to grieve. We didn't have family besides my parents, and they were gone. Besides that, it all started. The paperwork, hospital lights, and then a long car ride with a woman named Deborah, who talked the whole time like we were going to a sleepaway camp. She dropped me at a place called Grayson House, a foster home in the middle of nowhere. The building looked clean, but wrong. Red bricks, spotless windows, a garden that looked too perfect for the silence around it. There were security cameras at every corner. As we walked in, a man and woman stood at the door, both smiling like store mannequins. They introduced themselves as George and Linda. Their words were warm, but their eyes didn't blink enough. They led me into the main room where 7 other kids sat on a couch, their backs straight, hands folded. Each one nodded at me. Not one of them said a word. A girl named Amy walked me to my room without making eye contact. There were no toys, no posters, no clothes on the floor. Everything was perfectly folded and clean. That first night, I kept my eyes open, even under the blanket. I heard nothing. No whispers, no creaks. Just the sound of my own breathing getting faster every time I thought about how fake the smiles were and how none of the kids had asked me a single question. By the 3rd day, I realized everything ran on a schedule, down to the second. Wake up, wash up, dress in the same gray clothes, breakfast in silence. George sat at the table like a prison guard, arms crossed, eyes scanning. Linda handed out food with a mechanical smile. No one said a word unless spoken to. After breakfast, we cleaned, then schoolwork, then the garden, then dinner, then bed. Doors locked from the outside. I tried talking to Tyler, one of the older boys, while we were outside pulling weeds. I asked him how long he'd been there. He didn't answer. He didn't even look at me. That's when I noticed a small bruise behind his ear. When I reached out to ask again, he flinched like I'd hit him. That same day, Linda told me the only rule here was respect, and if I didn't follow it, there would be consequences. One night, I heard scratching sounds from the hallway. I got up to check, but the door wouldn't budge. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard quiet sobbing, then a sharp slap, and then complete silence. When I woke up, the hallway was spotless, and one of the boys, Eli, had a swollen cheek. He told me he fell. George nodded slowly in the background, watching every word. That was when I realized these people didn't care about us. They weren't trying to help. They were keeping us quiet, keeping us hidden, and making sure we stayed that way. The first time I disobeyed a rule was by accident. I didn't put my shoes back in the exact same spot by the door after the garden. That night, George dragged me out of my bed by the arm. He didn't shout, didn't explain. He just pulled me to the basement, turned on a single light bulb, and made me kneel facing the wall for what felt like hours. Every time I moved, he kicked the back of my leg. When he was done, he whispered in my ear,
"Next time you forget, I'll break your fingers."
When he let me go, I could barely walk. No one said anything until the next morning, but Eli slipped me a piece of toast when no one was looking. I understood then that the kids were looking out for each other. They just couldn't say it out loud. Over the next week, I saw more signs, small ones, hidden gestures. Amy tapped her finger twice on the table before speaking. Tyler rubbed his wrist whenever George was nearby. At first, I thought it was random, but then I saw the pattern. It was a system, a language. They had built it to warn each other, to survive. But George and Linda weren't that innocent. They saw it too. One day during cleaning time, George made Amy kneel in the middle of the kitchen, He asked everyone in the room to say who they loved most. Nobody answered. He repeated the question. Still, silence. Then, with no warning, he grabbed Amy's hand and crushed it under a rolling pin. I tried to scream, but Tyler held me back, whispering under his breath for me to not react. Amy bit down on her own arm to keep from crying. When it was over, George smiled.
We don't need love in this house. We need discipline.
That night I cried quietly in the dark, not because I was scared of dying, but because I realized they were breaking us, one by one, and there was no one coming to stop it. When the social worker came for her monthly visit, we were all lined up in clean clothes, fake smiles on our faces. Claire, the worker, asked if everything was all right. She even pulled me aside to ask again in private. I hesitated. I wanted to tell her, I really did. But 2 days before she arrived, George showed us a photo of Liam, the youngest boy, sleeping. He pointed at the picture and said,
You say one wrong word, I'll make sure he never wakes up.
Claire asked again if I was safe. I nodded and said yes. I hated myself the moment I did it. She smiled, gave me a brochure I wasn't allowed to keep, and left. After she was gone, George didn't speak for a whole hour. He just stood in the living room, staring at us. Then he picked Liam up by the arm and dragged him into the bathroom. We didn't see him for the rest of the night. When he came back, he wouldn't talk, wouldn't eat. His face was pale and his hands shook. I wanted to run. I thought about it every minute. Amy told me that they had cameras, alarms, traps in the backyard. The windows were nailed shut. But I couldn't stay. I couldn't become like the others, walking dead, afraid of breathing too loud. The breaking point came when I found blood in the laundry room. Not a little, a lot. A shirt soaked and still warm. I didn't know whose it was. No one was missing, but something in me snapped that night. I knew I'd either leave that house or die in it. We waited 2 more days. The rain had to be heavy enough to cover footsteps. Tyler helped me figure out which window hatch was loose. Amy made a fake version of me with a stuffed coat under the blanket in case they checked the beds. I didn't sleep. I just waited for midnight. The moment came fast. I slipped out of the room, careful not to breathe too loud. Eli opened the laundry room window from the inside. I crawled through, landed hard on the dirt, and started running. I barely made it halfway across the backyard when the alarm went off. A spotlight hit me. George's voice boomed behind me, louder than I'd ever heard.
Get back here now, or I swear to God I'll kill every last one of them.
I didn't stop. I couldn't. My legs pumped like they never had before. He was close. I heard the crunch of his boots behind me. Then a shout. Then a loud crash. I looked back and saw that Eli had tripped George, throwing a rake into his path. George recovered fast, though. Too fast. He tackled me near the fence. We rolled. His fist slammed into my side. I kicked him, bit his arm, screamed. He pinned me down and said something I'll never forget.
No one leaves unless I say they can.
Then Amy appeared, swinging a metal pipe. It hit his shoulder, knocking him off of me. I didn't wait. I climbed the fence, tore my hands on the barbed wire, and dropped to the other side. I heard him scream. I heard the kids yelling, but I kept running. I slept behind dumpsters, under bridges, in empty bus stops. I didn't care about food. I just needed to breathe air that wasn't poisoned by George and Linda's house. I lasted 5 days like that before my body gave up. I walked into a police station, half dead, and told them everything. They took notes, sent officers. They didn't believe any of it until I showed them a notebook. Bruises, scars, the blood-stained backpack I carried. When they finally raided the house, it was spotless. No kids, no adults, just folded bed sheets and cleaned-out rooms, as if it had all been a dream. They had vanished. Every trace of them, gone. The police told me they'd keep investigating, but I saw it in their eyes. Another lost cause, another case too late to solve. The foster system swallowed kids all the time. I was just one more voice that was too late. I don't have dreams anymore. I have flashes. Tyler's face in the rain. Amy's broken hand. Liam's silence. Every time I see a report about a new foster home, I show up. I check the place myself, even though it's not my job. I became a social worker because I needed to make sure no kid gets buried like we were. I know George and Linda are still out there. I feel it. Somewhere, they're doing it again. And who knows? With enough luck, maybe I'll get them.
Being a young woman is difficult, but being a young woman without family or guardians to look after you is even more frightening. Growing up, all I knew was instability. One of my earliest memories is being transferred to a new foster home from an old one. No family wanted me, and the one that took me in treated me very poorly. The CPS worker looking after my file was also fed up with me being rejected by family after family. All this stopped when I turned 8 and the Fredericks took me in. The Frederick family was huge. Mr. and Mrs. Frederick were this loving couple who had 3 kids of their own and fostered 4 more, including me. When Sarah, my CPS worker, handed me over to the Fredericks, she was terrified that they too would kick me out, but the Fredericks were known for taking in troubled kids. You see, when I was 2, I was found by the cops beside my mother's dosed body. I was starving and crying. Somewhere, even though I don't remember this particular incident, I developed abandonment issues, making it difficult for me to adjust to any family. My first day in Frederick's household was nice. Mrs. Frederick and Anna showed me to my room, which I shared with Grace, another girl they fostered who was 10 at that time. They made me feel welcomed and loved, fed me, and even gave me a couple of new things for school and clothes. I thought I was finally safe. But little did my younger self know. As days passed, I began to notice certain things. Firstly, all the kids fostered by the Fredericks were girls. Secondly, the difference in treatment of us 4 foster girls and Mr. and Mrs. Frederick's own kids was stark. But despite all this, I still loved this foster house the most because we got to eat as much as we wanted, we got to watch TV, go to school regularly, and Anna sometimes even helped us girls with homework. It was better than all the other homes I had lived in. Slowly, I started to make friends with all the other kids in the house. But the last thing I found odd was how little the other girls spoke. They had been with the Fredericks for longer than I had, and they never seemed to enjoy life as I did. And soon, I got to know why. One evening, as I was doing homework in my room, Anna called me down. Grace, who was my roommate, flinched when she heard Anna's sweet voice calling me down. Something in her eyes changed, and I failed to notice it as I walked downstairs. Anna was dressed in her usual floral dress, an apron perpetually tied around her front. "What happened, Mrs. Frederick?" I asked as she took my hand and made me sit with her around the kitchen table. "There is something I need to ask you about," Anna said in the sweetest voice. What is it?" "Do you like watching TV, Mia?" she asked. "Yes, I do," I chirped. I loved the cartoon on the TV. "One day in the future, would you like to be on TV?" Anna asked, and I practically jumped on my seat with excitement. 8-year-old me, who had only seen foster homes all her life, had started dreaming about a better life right then and there. "I would love that, Mrs. Frederick," I almost yelled. "Good, that's great. So then we are preparing you for that. You see, one of my brothers is an excellent photographer. How about next week we visit him and get some photos of you?" Anna proposed, and it was like a dream come true for me. I nodded eagerly to every suggestion she made. All your foster sisters, too, want to be on TV when they grow up, but let me tell you a secret. I think you are better than all of them. So how about tomorrow after school we pick a new dress for you? Anna asked, and I practically hugged her for offering to buy me a new dress. And as decided the following Sunday, Anna and I drove to her brother's house with me wearing my new dress. But instead of it being a big house as I had expected, it was a trailer in the rough part of the town. But little me did not notice all of that, too excited to be on TV. The door was opened by a man who looked in his late 40s, and thick cigarette smoke covered the inside of the home. I coughed as we entered. Mark, this is Mia, the newest member of our family. Anna introduced me to the man who was wearing only shorts. He took one look at me and chuckled.
Where did you get this pretty little thing?
Mark asked Anna, and she made an expression I could not understand. Then Anna and Mark walked into a room and began talking. I could not hear all of their words, but they were talking about some applications and more money. When Mark walked back into the living room followed by Anna, she asked me to follow him. He took me into a room where there was a camera already set up with a white backdrop and a stool was placed on. Go sit there, Anna said, and I did. At first, Mark asked me to smile and pose as if I was posing for a portrait, but as time passed, he asked me to pose weirdly. He asked me to bend over just enough to show my underpants. Then he clicked some pictures of only my hands and feet. Then he asked me to kneel down, look up, and open my mouth. I felt more and more uncomfortable as the photo shoot progressed, but every time I looked unsure, Anna smiled and encouraged me. Finally, when the photo shoot was over, Anna drove us over to our home and even bought me an ice cream on the way, and told me that was our secret and not to tell Mr. Frederick about all this. However, something about this photo shoot did not sit right with me. When Anna asked me to go for a photo shoot the next time, I almost refused and threw a tantrum, but then she once again told me about being on TV and how famous I would be and convinced me to go with her. This time, however, the photo shoot was worse. Mark made me wear a kid's bikini and click photos. That night I cried, and Grace, who always spoke little, just told me to hold on. After that, I too didn't talk much. I hated Mark and Anna, and how she never spoke about these photo sessions in front of her kids or her husband. One day in school, our teacher asked each one of us what we wanted to become when we grew up. I instantly told her that I was going to be a TV star and that I was already preparing for it. Mrs. Wilson's expression changed, and instead of being proud, she looked worried. That evening after class, she asked me questions about the shoot and how my home life is. She then gave me a chocolate from her bag and let me go. 3 days later, Sarah, along with a few other people and cops, arrived at our doorstep, and that's when shit hit the fan. Cops arrested Mrs. Frederick and Mark for child abuse, child pornography, and a bunch of other things I could not understand. All 4 of us were immediately removed from her care, and cops even threatened to take away her teens. Mr. Frederick was completely blindsided in all of this, and he struggled to believe that the side job Anna had picked up that brought extra money into the house was this. Fortunately, Mrs. Wilson, my teacher, offered to foster me and my foster sisters. As we grew up, she told us all the gruesome details of how our pictures were being sold to creeps online and how we were in great danger there. Not just me, but all my foster sisters and all the kids that came before me. Mark was given 80 years in jail and Anna 60. Now I'm a 22-year-old woman who has a foster daughter of her own, and I would never wish my fate upon even my worst enemy. This was my foster care horror story. What was yours?
Hello, my name is Brian. This is a story of how a little adoption trip could have gone terribly wrong and almost end my life. You might think that my girlfriend and I wanted to adopt a child, but we don't. We really aren't interested in having children, at least for now. What we did go to adopt was a little puppy. The trip was long, and both my girlfriend and I thought, well, since we're going to California to adopt a puppy, why not stay a few days and take a vacation? Once we went to adopt the dog, we met the owner at the shelter. The girl seemed a little reclusive, but you could tell she was a good person. She not only gave us the dog and all the papers to make the adoption official, but she also recommended a hotel to spend a few days near the beach. The puppy was beautiful. He was a small black dog with 2 different colored eyes. He was still about 5 months old, but since his legs were quite long, we could tell he was going to be a big dog. I really didn't want to stress him too much traveling back and forth, so we just went to the hotel the girl recommended, and luckily we got a room and were able to settle in. The hotel was very nice. We were close to the beach and had all the amenities for a vacation. I really thought that with the dog we wouldn't be able to go anywhere, but it actually made things easier. The dog was already vaccinated and could go for a walk, so it wouldn't be a problem. What was going to be a problem were the neighbors. You see, we rented the hotel for 2 weeks, which was what we had left on our vacation. But on the second day of the hotel, we started to receive a lot of complaints from the management. These complaints said that our dog was too noisy, that he barked, and that he didn't let them sleep. Apart from being cruel and unfair, this was a lie, since the puppy hardly made any noise and barked only once or twice during the whole day. We tried to be out of the hotel as much of the time as possible. We rested the puppy to sleep when we got to the hotel, and mostly it worked. The dog was very calm and quiet, but the complaints not only kept coming, they got worse. They were getting more and more aggressive, and it got to the point that the hotel staff told us that if the complaints kept coming, we had to leave. At this point, we didn't know what to do. We really didn't want to go to another hotel, and the fact that they were kicking us out seemed really unfair. Whoever was complaining must really hate dogs. The night we were about to spend our first week there, we started to hear a lot of noises upstairs. Someone was moving a lot of furniture. It was 4 a.m. This really wasn't the time to remodel. Startled by the noises, the puppy started barking in fright. In response, the furniture stopped moving, but we heard something else. The person who was moving the furniture started banging on the floor, which reached our ceiling. At the same time, he also shouted something.
"Shut that damn dog up before he gets you thrown out!"
That was it. This was the person who was denouncing us. Furious, I went upstairs to have a chat. My girlfriend wanted to come with me, but someone had to keep an eye on the dog. Besides, she knew where I was going to be. Once I climbed the stairs, it wasn't hard to find the room where the complaints were coming from. The door was open, and inside, it was dark. I thought about leaving. Something about that place gave me a bad feeling. But suddenly, the lady who had threatened us before started screaming. They were not screams of rage, they were screams of pain. Something was happening to her. No matter how angry I was with her, I could not allow a woman to be hurt, whether it was a thief or her own husband. I went in determined to see what was happening. To my surprise, the door closed, and I was left in the dark. There was no more screaming, no more movement, no more complaining. Nothing. It was as if the room was empty. The light came on almost instantly, but something was wrong. The light was red. Upon inspecting the hotel room, it had no furniture, and there were satanic symbols drawn all over the room. In the center, there was a huge pentagram. Without time to process what was happening, I felt someone grab me from behind and hold a knife to my throat, making a sound as if to make me understand that I had to be quiet. From the leftovers, a woman in a ceremonial robe walked into the circle. Once she took off her robe, I recognized her. It was the woman from the shelter, the woman who gave us the puppy for adoption. The woman walked towards me with a somber, indifferent look on her face. She had a syringe in her hand, and without giving me time to speak, she quickly injected me. My body began to feel weak. I didn't lose consciousness. I didn't fall asleep or hallucinate, but my body became very weak, and I collapsed. The man began to drag me to the center of the circle, and once I was there, they took off all my clothes, leaving me in my underwear. The woman from the shelter approached me with a huge dagger that she pointed at the center of my chest. Suddenly, someone banged violently on the door to the room. It was my girlfriend for sure. I had to warn her not to come in. I had to tell her that she was in danger. Everyone waved to the other, and they turned the lights off. One man hid behind the door as he did with me. He opened it slowly. I tried to scream, to move, to make noise, but I couldn't. My body was totally paralyzed. When the door finished opening, my girlfriend was behind it with the dog in her hands, but she was not alone. The hotel manager and 2 policemen who were guarding the place were with her. The policeman pulled out his gun and quickly pointed it at the man behind the door. The lights came on and the other 2 people in the house raised their hands. I was safe. After I was rescued, I learned the whole truth. The neighbors' complaints were not real. This was all a trap by the girl at the shelter to get me to go into that apartment of my own free will. She recommended this hotel to me because that's where her boyfriend worked. Her boyfriend was the morning shift manager, the man who made up all the claims. My girlfriend found out that something was wrong with me because, without my knowledge, she followed me from afar to see that everything was in order and saw how someone who was hiding locked me in the room. When she went to tell the manager, he not only told her that he knew nothing about the complaints, he told her that the room had not been rented for over a month. This whole pet adoption thing was a front. A front to get young couples to be victims of their sacrifices and rituals they were trying to do in that apartment. I was not the first victim, as there were people before me who were not as lucky as I was. Luckily, the dog was still with us, but in our home. From that day on, I could never again go to a hotel without being scared, ignoring every sound we heard, and locking the doors immediately.